Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I want you to leave me alone. That was the last thing she said to me before turning back to her phone, her face lit by the glow of a screen that seemed more alive to her than I ever was. 14 words. No shouting, no fight, no build-up. Just cold dismissal delivered like a verdict. And all I had done was ask for a little of her time. A moment together. A shared laugh. Anything. I stood there in the doorway, frozen. My chest wasn't burning with anger. It was hollow, like someone had scooped everything out of me in one strike. I remember nodding once, not trusting my voice, and walking away. She didn't follow. She didn't call after me. She just kept scrolling. That night, she went to bed early. Alone. I stayed downstairs in the dark, listening to the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the clock, every second slicing deeper. I could have confronted her, asked her if she even wanted me anymore. But I didn't. Instead, I made a quiet promise to myself. She wanted space. She was going to get more than she ever imagined. The next morning, I gave her exactly what she asked for. Silence. I didn't ask if she wanted coffee. I didn't ask about her plans. I moved around her like she wasn't there. And for a while, she seemed relieved. She hummed to herself in the kitchen, posted selfies with bright captions, even left earlier for work than usual. She thought she had won. But here's the thing about silence. It grows heavier with time. By the third day, she lingered in the kitchen, waiting for me to start a conversation I never offered. By the fourth, she hovered at the door when I got home, her eyes searching mine for a spark I no longer gave. On the fifth, she cooked dinner, setting the table for two, pretending it was casual. I ate in silence, thanked her politely, and left the room. A week later, she cracked. I came home late, my gym bag slung over my shoulder, sweat still drying on my skin. She was sitting on the couch, her phone abandoned on the coffee table for once. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking. She asked if we could just talk for a minute. Just 1 minute. The same woman who had looked me in the eye and told me to leave her alone was now begging for the attention she once rejected. And in that moment, I realized something. Her words had set me free. I wasn't her entertainment. I wasn't her safety net. I was done being her background noise. She wanted to know what it felt like to be without me. She was about to learn. Her plea for a minute didn't move me. I didn't raise my voice, didn't even acknowledge her desperation. I walked past her, dropped my bag by the stairs, and took a shower. By the time I came back down, she was still there, her eyes swollen, her hands twisting nervously. She asked again if we could talk. I gave her one word, no, and sat across the room scrolling through my phone. She broke eye contact first. The silence began to rot her from the inside. At first, she tried to act normal, overcompensating with forced smiles and fake cheer whenever she thought I was watching. She started cooking elaborate dinners, dressing up even on weekdays, leaving notes on the counter like she was suddenly the attentive partner she'd stopped being months ago. But I didn't play into it. I ate her food without compliments. I left her notes unopened. I went to bed earlier than her, and when she tried to slide closer, I shifted just far enough for her to feel the gap. By the third day, she cracked again. I was in the middle of reading when she sat across from me and asked if I was angry. Her voice was small, almost childlike. I told her calmly, I'm not angry. I'm done. She froze, searching for some explanation, but I didn't offer one. The stillness that followed was worse than any argument. Her friends began to notice. I overheard her on the phone late at night, her voice trembling as she tried to convince someone that everything was fine, that I was just stressed from work. Lies always sound different when fear is wrapped around them. She laughed too loudly, filled pauses with excuses, but when she hung up, I could hear the quiet sob in her throat. The next morning, she tried a new tactic. She came into the kitchen dressed in one of those old outfits she used to wear when we first dated, something she hadn't touched in years. She leaned against the counter, waiting for my eyes to linger. I looked once, nodded politely, and poured my coffee. The color drained from her face, the realization hitting harder than anything I could have said out loud. By the end of that week, her confidence had collapsed. The same woman who once told me to leave her alone now hovered at every corner, desperate for scraps of attention. She followed me with her eyes when I moved through the house, waited at the door when I came home, texted me during the day just to ask where I was. I answered with the same precision I had chosen since the night she dismissed me. Short, cold, controlled. And for the first time, she looked afraid. Not of me, but of the silence she had begged for finally becoming permanent. The silence had done its work. By now, she wasn't just unsettled, she was unraveling. I could see it in the way her hands lingered on her phone, waiting for a message that never came. She used to pride herself on being untouchable, the one who decided when we connected, when we talked, when intimacy was rationed out like currency. But now, she was the one watching the clock, the one waiting for crumbs. One night, I came home later than usual. The house was dark except for the glow of the lamp in the living room. She was sitting there, dressed up like she was expecting company. Hair done, makeup perfect, a dress I hadn't seen her wear in years. She didn't even bother pretending it was casual. She looked up, lips parting like she had rehearsed a line all evening. Thought maybe we could go out tonight. Just you and me. I set my keys down, calm, measured. Already 8. That was it. No explanation. No apology. I walked past her and upstairs. The shift hit her then. The realization that the rhythm had changed. For years, I was the one chasing. Now, she was running after shadows, trying to catch something she had already killed. A few days later, I tightened the noose without saying a word. I rerouted my paycheck into a private account. Clean. Silent. No access for her. I shut down a couple of joint subscriptions she thought ran on autopilot. The next night, she tried to play our favorite series on the TV. The login failed. She sighed, called my name, waiting for me to fix it. I didn't move. The silence answered for me. At first, she masked her panic with irritation. Slamming drawers, sighing loudly, muttering under her breath. But irritation gave way to unease, and unease gave way to something closer to desperation. She started texting me during the day. Short messages at first. Hope your morning's good. What do you want for dinner? Miss you. I didn't ignore them. That would have given her a target. Instead, I replied with precision. Fine. Doesn't matter. All good. Each word was a scalpel. Not cutting her directly, but letting her bleed out slowly in the quiet. And then came the first real crack. I walked into the bedroom one evening and caught her going through my laundry. She tried to act casual, folding shirts that didn't need folding, fingers sliding over receipts tucked into my jeans pocket. She was looking for answers. For proof. For anything that explained the silence that had replaced the man she thought she owned. I didn't call her out. Didn't even blink. I let her stew in it. Let her drown in the ambiguity she had once wielded against me. This wasn't revenge. Revenge would have meant I still cared. This was liberation. I wasn't punishing her. I was erasing her. And the truth is, the most terrifying man isn't the one who shouts. It's the one who no longer feels the need to speak at all. Because by then, I wasn't her husband anymore. I was already gone. By the 4th week, the silence had become a presence in the house. Thick, suffocating, unavoidable. She used to crave space, but now she was choking on it. I could see it in the way she hovered at the edges of rooms, waiting for me to engage. Her once casual independence had shifted into restless pacing, nervous gestures, and the constant flicker of her eyes trying to read mine. She was unraveling, and I hadn't raised my voice once. That was when I started cutting the invisible threads she didn't even know were there. The bills she never touched stopped being automatic. The grocery orders she assumed would appear at the door no longer showed up. The house felt heavier without the small comforts she thought she managed herself. She asked one night if I noticed the missing deliveries. I told her, calm and flat, maybe you should check it. Then I walked away. She checked. She learned quickly how little of this life had ever been hers. The cracks grew deeper. She tried cooking dinner again, but the fridge was half empty, the pantry bare. She looked at me across the table, expecting me to fix it. I ate quietly, stood, and washed my own plate. No more. When she sighed, frustrated, I let the sound hang in the air until it broke itself. One evening, she came home with arms full of shopping bags, only to find her card declined again. She confronted me, her voice trembling, saying something about errors at the bank. I shrugged. Maybe. That single word was enough. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. She was beginning to understand that I wasn't angry. I was gone. The next blow came when she tried her old keys in the lock after a late night out. They didn't fit. I had changed every cylinder in the house that afternoon. I sat in the living room with the lights low, listening to her fumble with the metal, then knock. 3 sharp knocks, each louder than the last. Finally, I opened the door, just enough to let her in. Her eyes darted to the new lock, then back to me. "You changed it," she said, stunned. I nodded once, expression calm, then walked past her without another word. Her shoulders sank. Her lips parted like she might protest, but the silence swallowed her whole. That was the moment she finally realized. The house, the life, even the air between us no longer belonged to her. She had wanted distance. Now she was living in it, every day, every night. And the cruelest part? I didn't have to throw her out. I just stopped letting her in. The silence had already stripped her of control, but now it was time for me to move forward. Not for her, not to punish her, for me. I began waking up earlier, slipping out of the house before she stirred. She probably thought I was running errands, maybe avoiding her. But I wasn't running from anything. I was building something. The gym became my sanctuary. At first, it was just an hour a day, pushing weights, clearing my head. But soon it became more than that. Each drop of sweat washed away the version of me she thought she knew, the man waiting around for scraps of attention. My body grew leaner, stronger, sharper. And every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone she no longer had power over. When I came home, I didn't explain where I'd been. Sometimes 8 at night, sometimes 9. My bag slung over my shoulder, the faint smell of chalk and iron still clinging to me. She would hover in the hallway, makeup on though she had nowhere to be, waiting for me to ask about her day. I'd nod politely, drop my bag, and head upstairs. No questions, no warmth, just presence without availability. She started to notice the changes. She lingered longer when I changed clothes, watching me out of the corner of her eye. One evening, she made a comment about how I looked different, healthier. I just smiled, calm and unreadable, and said nothing. That silence told her what words never could. My transformation wasn't for her. Her panic deepened. She began texting me during the day, more often than before. Not just check-ins, but attempts to pull me back. "Hope your workout went well. Thinking of making dinner tonight, your favorite. Miss you." I responded, but each reply was stripped bare. "Fine. Whatever works." "Busy." My words weren't walls. They were blades. Precise, sharp, cutting away every illusion that I still belonged to her. The more I grew, the smaller she seemed. I noticed her staying up later, scrolling endlessly on her phone, her reflection pale in the screen's glow. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me like I was a stranger she couldn't read anymore. And that's exactly what I had become, unreachable, untouchable. The man she dismissed with a careless, "leave me alone," was gone. In his place was someone colder, stronger, self-contained. And the more she realized it, the more desperate she became. She used to believe I would always orbit her, no matter how far she pushed me away. But now, she was the one orbiting me, powerless to pull me back. And I had no intention of returning. Her desperation turned physical. One night, I walked into the bedroom and found her waiting, dressed in silk I hadn't seen in years. She leaned against the doorframe, her lips painted red, her eyes scanning me for a reaction. She was trying to rewind time, to pull me back into the gravity she thought she still had. I paused, looked at her once, and kept walking past. No comment, no smile, just silence. She climbed into bed beside me, close enough that her perfume filled the air, her skin brushing mine. I stayed still, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, my breathing even. She whispered something about missing us, about wanting to start over. I didn't answer. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, until she finally turned away, her body trembling with frustration. The next morning, she tried again in a different way. Breakfast was waiting on the table, pancakes, eggs, coffee poured the way I used to like it. She hovered while I ate, her eyes searching mine for gratitude, for softness, for anything. I thanked her politely, placed my plate in the sink, and grabbed my bag for the gym. Her smile collapsed the second I closed the door behind me. The pattern repeated. She tried little touches when I passed her in the hallway, her fingers grazing my arm as if by accident. She lingered in the kitchen when I came home, pretending to scroll on her phone but watching me from the corner of her eye. One evening, she even set a bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the coffee table, a scene carefully staged. I walked past, nodded once, and went upstairs. The click of the bedroom door was louder than any rejection. Her mask finally cracked when she confronted me. She stood in the living room, gripping a glass of wine too tightly, her voice trembling as she asked if I was seeing someone else. I met her eyes calmly, and instead of answering, I just said, I have places to be, people to see. Then I walked past her, leaving her frozen, her face pale with shock. That single phrase shattered her, because she understood, maybe for the first time, that I no longer belonged to her world. The fear in her eyes wasn't about betrayal. It was about irrelevance. She was no longer the center, no longer the audience, no longer the one I came home for. And the more she reached, the further I drifted. Not with anger, not with noise, but with silence sharp enough to cut her down piece by piece. Her mask finally broke when the outside world started noticing. She could hide her panic from me, but not from everyone else. It began with her best friend. I overheard the voicemail while she was in the shower. A cheery voice asking if everything was okay, saying she seemed distracted, different. I played it twice, the corners of my mouth lifting at the irony. Even her friends could see what she was desperate to deny. Soon, her family reached out. Her sister called me directly one afternoon, her tone sharp. She asked if we were fighting, if something had happened. I didn't explain, didn't defend myself. I just told her to ask her sister. That was all it took. Later that night, I watched her pacing the living room, phone pressed tight to her ear as she tried to spin a story, her voice cracking under the weight of her lies. She was on the defensive, and I hadn't said a word. Her panic bled into her behavior. She started forcing smiles at dinners, clinging to my arm in public like she wanted to prove something. But I never leaned back into the performance. My face stayed calm, unreadable. That silence was louder than any accusation. Friends noticed. They whispered. I could see it in their eyes when they looked at her, then at me. The image she had crafted so carefully was cracking in front of them, and I didn't have to lift a finger. One evening, her mother called the house. I answered. She asked softly if I was okay, if her daughter was treating me right. I didn't complain, didn't accuse. I just said, she wanted to be alone. She's getting exactly that. Then I wished her good night and hung up. That sentence traveled faster than any story she could invent. By the end of the week, I knew her family was looking at her differently. I caught her later scrolling through her social media, deleting pictures, rewriting captions, trying to claw back the version of herself she once sold to the world. But her panic betrayed her. The hands that once held her phone steady now trembled with every edit. She had wanted silence. She had begged for space. But silence isn't clean, it echoes. And now those echoes were bouncing outside our walls, reaching her friends, her family, her world. She was no longer just losing me. She was losing the story she told everyone else. And all I had to do was let her drown in her own wish. The silence had hollowed her out. The whispers from friends and family had weakened her mask, but it was time to take the next step. I wanted her to feel the reality of what life, without me, truly meant. Not just emotionally, physically. One afternoon while she was at work, I had the locks changed. Front door, back door, garage. Every key she once carried became useless. The locksmith handed me the new set, cool metal in my palm, and for the first time in years I felt complete control. When I slipped them onto my keychain, it wasn't anger that I felt. It was finality. She didn't notice immediately. She came home as usual, scrolling through her phone, dropping her bag on the couch. But later that week, she returned late at night. I was sitting in the dark living room when I heard the jingle of keys at the door, followed by the scrape of metal that refused to turn. Her muttering grew frustrated, then desperate, until finally she knocked. 3 sharp raps. I waited before opening the door, just long enough for her to feel it, the weight of being locked out of her own life. When I finally let her in, her eyes went straight to the new lock. You changed it, she whispered, her voice unsteady. I nodded once and walked past her. No explanation, no argument, just silence. The next blow came financially. I redirected the last of my income into a private account. The joint card she relied on withered. Small luxuries vanished. Her subscriptions failed, deliveries stopped arriving. Her favorite services went dark. She called out one evening, saying something was wrong with the bank. I didn't answer. She tried again, louder this time. I kept reading, letting her hear her own panic fill the empty room. Her mask cracked further when she realized the fridge was nearly bare. She had always assumed groceries would appear as they always had, but now the shelves stared back empty. She hovered behind me that night, waiting for me to notice, to fix it. I finished my meal, washed my plate, and left her standing in silence. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. She had wished to be left alone. I was simply giving her the life she wrote for herself. Only now, stripped of the comforts and control she once took for granted, she finally felt the weight of those words. And for the first time, I saw it in her eyes. Not anger, not defiance, but fear. The kind of fear that comes when you realize the person you dismissed has already vanished, and there's no way to pull him back. By then, the walls around her were already collapsing. The silence at home had eaten her alive. The financial shift stripped her comfort, and the lock on the door told her exactly where she stood. But what truly broke her wasn't inside the house. It was outside. Her image, her reputation, her carefully built narrative began to crack under the weight of truth she couldn't control. It started small. A friend asked me casually at the gym if everything was all right at home. I didn't lie, but I didn't give details either. I just said, she wanted space. She's got it. That single line spread faster than any story she could invent. By the end of the week, whispers followed her. People noticed the hesitation in her smile, the way her eyes darted when someone mentioned me. Her family wasn't far behind. Her sister sent me a message, asking if things were falling apart. I wrote back. She asked to be left alone. I listened. That was all. When her sister called her later that night, I heard the sharpness in her voice through the thin walls, demanding answers she didn't have. She paced the kitchen, stumbling over excuses, her voice rising then breaking. I sat upstairs, calm, letting her drown in her own performance. The shift was brutal. In public, she clung harder to the act, laughing too loudly, leaning into me at dinners as if touch could erase the cracks. But I never played along. My face stayed calm, detached, while eyes around us picked up on what she was desperate to hide. She wasn't the confident woman she once pretended to be. She was unraveling under scrutiny. One night, her mother called. I answered. She asked if her daughter was treating me well, her voice thick with suspicion. I didn't accuse, didn't complain. I just said, she told me to leave her alone. I respected that. And then I hung up. By the next day, I knew her family had turned their eyes on her, questions piling up that she couldn't bury. I caught her later, scrolling furiously through her social media, deleting photos, rewriting captions, reshaping the story she once flaunted. Her hands shook as she typed, her reflection pale in the glow of the screen. She was no longer fighting for me. She was fighting for her image, her mask, the fragile shell of a life that was already gone. And that was the moment she finally understood. I wasn't her problem anymore. Her problem was the silence, the truth it carried, the way it spread beyond our walls, the way it revealed her to the world. She had asked to be left alone. And now, alone was all she had. The end didn't come with shouting. There were no slammed doors, no broken glass, no midnight fights neighbors could overhear. The end came the way it should have, quiet, deliberate, final. By then, I had already packed what mattered. My documents, a few clothes, the pieces of myself I wanted to take forward. Everything else I left behind. Furniture, trinkets, memories, none of it belonged to me anymore. It belonged to the man who used to wait for her affection. That man was gone. She found me in the living room that last evening, the duffel bag at my feet, my jacket slung over the chair. Her face was pale, her eyes red from nights of restless crying. She asked if we could talk, her voice fragile, cracking under its own weight. She promised she would try harder, that she finally understood what she had lost. I let her speak, let her spill apologies into the air, let her beg for something that no longer existed. I gave her nothing in return, just silence. When she finally stopped, I stood and placed my house key on the table. The sound of metal against wood echoed louder than her words. Her breath caught, her hands trembling as she reached out, as if she could stop me with touch alone. I stepped back. She whispered my name, softer than ever before, but it no longer had a hold on me. I walked to the door, calm and steady. She followed a few steps, her presence clinging like a shadow that couldn't survive without the light. I didn't turn. I didn't give her one last look. I opened the door, the cool night air brushing against my face, clean and sharp. I stepped out, closing it quietly behind me. There was no grand speech, no accusations, no demands. She had told me to leave her alone. And in the end, that was exactly what I gave her. The life she asked for, the silence she thought she wanted. The difference was this. She imagined silence as freedom. But silence has a way of exposing truth, of echoing louder than words. And now, she was left with nothing but her wish, the emptiness she created, and the sound of her own choices. I didn't disappear. I didn't vanish into the dark. I simply walked away, lighter than I had ever been. She wanted silence. I left her with it. And silence is louder than any goodbye. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.